This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Hey guys, today I'm excited to sit down with Andrew Ayers, founder of the office of Andrew Ayers, a New York-based firm serving business owners, families, and entrepreneurs. Andrew's approach goes far beyond contracts and courtrooms. With a strong focus on business formation, estate planning, and entrepreneurial growth, he's built a practice around helping clients protect their assets and create lasting legacies. Today, we'll explore how he got into this specific field of law, what he's doing different, and really how is his firm standing out amongst the crowd. I mean, this guy has such a plethora of knowledge on estate planning and how to really secure your legacy that today's episode is a must listen. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. Let's get started.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. Well, so, let's start where it all began. Andrew, how did you get into law? I mean, everybody has kind of a story. They went to college, but really, what made you gravitate towards law, and even more so, why the focus on business and estate planning?
Sure. So actually, my first focus was going to be entertainment law. So when I was in college, I worked at the student radio station. I was very involved. I was a music director. I was the general manager. And I thought by going to law school, I could then parlay that into going into the music industry. So that was the main reason I went to law school. And then even after I graduated, I was still hoping to get into entertainment law, but it can be a challenge. It's a very closed part of the legal system. You really have to know somebody. And unfortunately, in the end, I didn't know anybody. So I started my career doing family law, and then I transitioned to estate planning and business law when I was doing divorces, and I would see that the clients still had a lot of other things that they needed beyond just being separated from their spouse. A lot of these clients had their own business and they needed help cleaning it up after the disaster that can be a divorce. And especially when it comes to estate planning, a lot of them had created a will with their spouse when they were married. But now that you're separated, you don't want that person having any decisions over your life going forward. So it was a matter of really helping people create that new plan that springs from that new situation they find themselves in.
Interesting. And a lot of people don't even think about that. I think, a lot of people, at least in my experience, I've seen, they don't start really think about wills and whatnot towards later on in life. But I think, from my experience and from other attorneys, I think the sooner you get on top of it, the better, because you never know really what's going to happen, especially in a situation like this. If you get divorced or, unforeseen circumstances, whatever will that you had then, would you really want that person, like you said, in control of your future and your assets, or even something after you're gone? So that makes perfect sense. So you came from a larger firm. How did that experience working in bigger firms, working with more corporate clients, really shape how your firm is today and how you went to go build your firm?
Well, I think the way it worked was it really showed me that there's different parts of the market. So I really learned that, at one point when I was in law school, I was working on a deal with large telephone companies. So this is back in the day when we had AT&T and Ma Bell and all these huge conglomerates. And the reality is I knew after working in those cases that that wasn't going to be for me, that I really enjoyed working with the smaller businesses, more down market. And I think they really need legal services as well. And they don't always need a big firm or that huge bill at the end of the month. They often need somebody who's really more connected to them and who understands them. So by running my own firm now for 14 plus years, a lot of the issues that my smaller clients are facing are ones that I've been dealing with as well. So I can let them know that, I've been down that road before. I've had that problem, and here's how we can solve it in your business. And if we need to do some legal work around it, here's that path forward for you.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you touch on a great point. Smaller businesses and, let's say high income net worth, individuals, even if they are well off and yes, they have a good small business, some of these larger firms, it's just not realistic for them to spend $1,500, $2,000 an hour for an attorney from a big law brand to come and represent them, or even giving them advice or consulting where you can play that pivotal role. Because I think you're right. A lot of these small business owners may be great in business and have found good success, But when it comes to their legal planning and their steps moving forward throughout, handling, the fine writings of law and making sure business formations, contract formations, partnership agreements are done correctly, they kind of, do it off the cuff. And a lot of times we see that affect them negatively. Have you like run across that, in your career so far?
Yeah, and actually, I kind of flipped that script on its head. So, what I will tell a small business owner when they start working with me is, I want you to outgrow me. I want you to grow so much that we need to now hand you off to a bigger firm that can handle intellectual property, that can handle your software patents, they can handle that advanced legal work that I don't do anymore. And that's a great sign that we've created that strong foundation for that small business. And we've grown you to the point where you need those larger firms. I think the challenge that you kind of identified is, some business owners think they have to start at the top with that big pricey lawyer and spend the $1,500 an hour when in fact you want to build up to that. Like any other business, that is part of your growth, and your legal representation can actually be representative of the way your company is growing as well.
So, where was the moment that you decided, hey, I'm going to go independent. I'm going to start my own law firm. I'm going to do it the way that I see fit and really help the people that I've, basically understood and seen that there's a gap in the market for?
Frankly, a big part of it was my clients were frustrated with the firm that I was working at. And I was getting comments like, why don't you go on your own? Working for somebody else, I had some clients who said, I want you to go to court with me, not somebody else. But that wasn't my call. I didn't get to choose who went to court with them. And so a lot of that was coming from the control that I wanted, and I think my clients wanted over their matters. But the more important factor, frankly, was my daughter had been born. And so my daughter was born about 9-10 months before that. And I wanted to be able to spend time with her and be able to manage my calendar so that I could spend time with my family. We've since had 2 more kids. And I think that's been the best part about having my own business is I can actually orient my life and my practice around my family and what all of our goals are, as opposed to having to be that person who goes to court at 5 o'clock on a Friday because somebody got in some kind of trouble. So that real control and the ability to connect with your family is really one of the motivating factors. And when I work with small business owners, they often have that same desire as well. They don't want to be slave to their business 24/7. They usually have families. They want to create an estate plan to protect them. They want to create a business plan to protect the business as well. I don't know that we have a ton of people left who really just want to do that 24/7 hustle. I think, especially in the past few years, we've seen the importance of spending time with our loved ones, and that's more important than 24/7 in front of your computer screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the luxury, I would say. It comes back and forth. Starting your own firm, starting your own business can be daunting. There's risk. You're betting on yourself. You only eat what you kill. But at the end of the day, especially your daughter just being born, you want to spend more time with your family, especially getting on that partner track at a big firm. I mean, we're talking about 80, 120-hour weeks where it's not worth, I mean, to some people it is, and to them, more power to them. But, you don't want to wake up 20 years later and your kids are going to college and you're like, I missed out on their childhood because I was just grinding the whole time. Where in a situation like this, you can generally make as much or even more money with more flexibility, more financial freedom, and still have a higher quality of life. And I think that's kind of what we're all looking to, achieve at the end of the day, a post-COVID, so on and so forth. So amazing. What was some of the challenges? So you started your firm, it's got to be scary. I mean, having a 9-month-old child, you're going out on your own, you're a great attorney, so that's not a part that you have to be concerned about. But starting the firm, getting your own cases, building your practice, supplementing that income, what were some of the biggest challenges early on?
Yeah, I think the main challenge was figuring out where I wanted to go and what I wanted the business to look like. Because when you're working for someone else, you're using their systems and you're doing what they tell you to do. And this is the way they've always processed a file. And so for me, the first thing was, what did I want this firm to look like? I remember sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn. We started out where I would work out of my spare bedroom. Then we grew to the point that I had a desk in a shared co-working space in Brooklyn. And then from that desk, we went to a formal office. So it's been a growth from stage to stage. And what I found is my clients wanted that authenticity of me. And so My office in Brooklyn, being a co-working space, it was more of a fun space. So we had barn doors, there was bright colors, we had a great cafeteria. And I remember when I first started out, my biggest concern was that my clients would come to the office and not take it seriously because it didn't look like your Fifth Avenue Manhattan office that you pay way too much money for with the fantastic view of Central Park. But what I actually found is my clients loved it. I mean, I had a little old lady who would come by once every couple of weeks and there was nothing going on in her case. But she just liked the tea that we had in the cafeteria. She said, "Do you mind if I just come by once in a while and just, frankly, have a cup of tea?" And so I would send her with a couple extra tea packets to go home with too. I said, "You don't have to come to the office for our tea. It's fine. You can get it. You can take some home with you." And nobody complained that the office didn't look like a stuffy lawyer's office that you would see on Suits. I think they actually liked it because it really felt somewhere home and comfortable. And when you're dealing with somebody who, especially in the stressful event of a litigation or they're starting up their business and they're really nervous, being able to come somewhere comfortable and sit down and actually talk to an attorney, talk to others who understand you and can put you at ease was probably better than being, in the 98th floor of a tower overlooking Central Park, where you're wondering how many of the bagels on the table are going to find its way onto your bill at the end of the month.
In the stuffy office where it just costs too much money. And I think, having that personal approach and even working in a workspace, I think what we've learned, and I always like to use, pre-COVID and post-COVID as a timeline marker because a lot of things have changed in the legal landscape. I've been in the industry for 15 years. When I went to law school back in 2010, it was a whole different ball field. Like people were going to the big K Street firms in DC to try to get on the partner track. And it was, there was a set modus operandi that you follow to get from point A to point B, where now I know many attorneys that have virtual offices and they're doing very successful. And a lot of them were concerned, just like yourself early on, where, hey, maybe I have a co-working space or maybe I have just a virtual office. Maybe I'm working at home. What are my clients going to think? Are they going to think that I'm not, as successful as an attorney or as good as an attorney, or my practice isn't as, foundationally strong? And really, at the end of the day, what I've seen, none of that ever played out. Most of the time, clients were happy because they were getting the same quality work, if not better, most of the times better, than paying $2,000 an hour for, you know, Fifth Avenue a lawyer. The Fifth Avenue lawyer has 80 cases on his desk and he only has a limited amount of time to really allocate to you, where now the same attorney can spend more time with you, can talk to you. They're not billing you on every minute, every 15-minute cycle to make sure at the end of the day every penny's pinched. And they get a whole different perspective on who their counsel is. And I think it goes, a long way in the future of your firm and the future of other people's firms when they operate in that way, moving forward in today's legal landscape. So as we work into that, right? You've been scaling your firm 14 years now. You worked heavily with entrepreneurs, small business owners. What have you learned about some legal challenges that most of them overlook as just an everyday business owner, maybe a franchisee owner, or just a guy that's has a successful small business, maybe making a couple $1 million a year, but where are they generally seeing legal challenges overlooked?
I think the most common thing I see, and there's nothing wrong with this, is that people will use LegalZoom or an online website just to create their company. And then they get up and running and everything is fine and they're operating. If you're in New York, it's kind of an outlier because in New York, when we do an LLC, you have to sign an operating agreement within 90 days. That's under the law. But in other states, you can just form your company and start operating. And there's no oversight. You don't get in trouble if you don't have an operating agreement, and you can run for years and years. What I've been finding recently is people who've run very successful businesses, some over a decade now, are now ready to bring on either financing or bringing on employees or bringing on other owners. But in order to do that, you have to have your legal foundation. You have to have your operating agreement. These investors want to know that this is a legitimate business, that you've put in the time, you've done the legal work, you've got the documents in place. And if you don't, you're going to find you're getting a significant discount on what they're going to offer you. Because if you don't have everything put together legally, if you don't have your operating agreement, we want to have yearly minutes, we want to have things documented. That shows a nice legitimate business that someone says, I can invest in this. I can see history. I can see earnings. I know that this business is stable versus somebody who's been operating out of their apartment for 5, 10 years. but doesn't have anything in place, we don't know what's really going on under the hood. We don't know what we're signing on for. Are we signing on for a business that has a lot of liabilities hanging out over its head that the LLC might not protect against? So we want to make sure that those business foundations are really put together. We want to dot the I's, cross the T's, because that's what most people are looking for in their business, is that liability and that personal protection, as opposed to having just something out there that can be called, from going to law school, piercing the corporate veil. If we want to get through that company and get to the individuals and hold them liable, one of the easiest ways to do it is we have a company that just formed itself and doesn't have a separate bank account, doesn't have an operating agreement, doesn't have any indication that is really anything more than Steve's business running out of his apartment. So we want to make sure we have those formalities to really show the outside world that this is a serious business.
And that brings into, I have a few clients that are in M&A, so mergers, acquisitions. They help business owners do their exit strategies. And we always hear, when talking to the attorneys, just like yourself, especially their business attorneys, where, hey, yes, you've had a successful business, but we don't have all the documents in place. We don't have the paperwork in place. We don't have P&L reports. And what you think you're making and what you think your business is doing, a lot of times is different than reality. And you see individuals, I'm making $200,000, $500,000 a month, but they're not really looking at what their real expenses are. And when a business is coming in to do an investment, let's say if you're getting venture capital or if you're just getting other investors in there, that corporate governance is paramount for you to, one, get a good exit strategy, to be able to get a good offer on your business. And you better start it sooner than later, because if you come down the line where you're like, yeah, I'm ready to sell my business, looking to get an offer, and you get pennies on the dollar because you don't have your paperwork in place, you don't have your documents together, you don't have any corporate governance, there's no operating agreement, you're not doing your P&Ls, maybe you're doing your taxes once a year and taking, a little salary just to cover, your personal taxes. Like, when it comes to that, it just gets really messy. And I've seen an individual who should have sold his company for around $15 million. Very successful. It was a multi-state, HVAC company. He had grown it from the ground up. Strong market, good clientele, everything. But the problem is he had no books. He had nothing. He had started an LLC years ago. There's no operating agreements. He brought some investors here when times were bad. They put some money in. There was some money on the books going out to some random guy here. And it just caused such a chaos that he had to actually spend a year and a half working with an M&A consultant to get his business on the right track, just so he could not take a massive loss on his sale. So, you're totally right when it comes to that. But, as we see, AI is taking over. Technology is changing the legal landscape daily. From client management systems to these AI tools, how have they changed the way that you serve clients in your business model?
I think the main way they've done it is they've streamlined a lot of the processes. So, as you were just talking about, a business owner and the discount they get, with AI these days, it's so easy to use it to assist you to create standard operating procedures for your business and create systems and have them documented, that I think whether it's my business or your business or anybody's business, creating those systems, which is what's going to add value to the business after you're gone, AI does a great job of that. Internally in my business, AI is used in a lot of different facets to try to streamline the process. I don't do hourly billing anymore unless I have to. So most of it's going to be transactional on a flat fee. And so we can use AI to streamline part of some of the steps in that process. What I don't like to do is use AI to draft things. I recently had somebody send me an operating agreement that they had created on ChatGPT, and it was all of 2 pages long. And I kind of went, there's a lot missing from that one. And this was going to be a serious franchise that he was going to be buying into. And I said, I don't think the franchisor is going to like that one either. You need to do the full agreement. But I think AI does a really good job of reviewing some of your thoughts and kind of organizing them. So one of the things I will do is, if you and I were having a call and you were going to be a new client, after the call is done, the microphone that's sitting below my chin right now, I will speak out my notes from our call into AI, and then it'll create a summary for me, some next steps, and give me an idea of where we're going. And it does a really good job, I think, of organizing my thoughts, because, when you and I are talking, we're probably going from 1 to 10, but it's like 1, 4, 2, 7, 8. We're bouncing around, and then you can stick in AI and it can really give you a nice organization of what you were discussing and what the next steps are. And I think that's where it can be most beneficial. And I think, AI is becoming almost like a utility where it's going to be like your power grid or the internet, where it's going to be in everything, whether you like it or not. And the people who are going to move forward are the ones who know how to harness that power. So they're not going to take your job. It's going to be somebody who knows how to use AI will be who takes your job.
Absolutely. And, it's funny that you said that. I just was reading an article today. So I'm assuming you know of Accenture, the large accounting firm. So Accenture is talking about massive layoffs. And the specific point that they're bringing up is we are looking to lay off individuals that are unable to integrate with AI. So basically, they want you to enhance your skill sets with various LLM model AI automation tools, because that's how they want to run the business in the future, because they've seen it to be just more efficient for some of their operations. And the individuals that are, maybe they're too senior, or maybe they've been there long enough where they feel like they don't have to like learn a new skill set. They're on the chopping block because, hey, you either adapt or you die. That's just how the world works. Survival of the fittest, and it applies to all settings. Unless you're willing to acclimate to this changing environment and making sure that you know how to handle it and utilize it successfully, you're going to lose your job. And it's not really losing your job, it's you giving your job away because you knew this was coming. AI is integrated in every single aspect. I have a client right now that they're doing, medical transcription, right, through AI. Every single, from legal, medical to, even the small mom and pop shops are using AI just to help with efficiency, because that's what it does. It doesn't create original thought, it doesn't create original ideas, but it does help reinforce efficiency patterns, systems. And I guess one of the things that I truly believe in is, in my business, if there's anything I have to do more than once, it should have an SOP. There should be a process, because if I have to do it more than once, then I'm probably going to be doing it more than twice. And in that way, if there's a process for it, I'm not left always doing it, and I can either delegate it out, or at least I know how to replicate it each time, and I'm not back to the drawing board trying to figure out how to do this thing I've already done a couple of times. It's very, it cuts down, actual execution time by up to 50%. So why not? Now, you have a pretty strong podcast. I think you have right now almost 3,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, your YouTube channel, not so much a podcast. Now, you've had so many great videos. I think one of the videos that I was looking at earlier today was, how to, maintain a trust, or, what do you do for a trust for a 50-year-old? Right. And people don't think about these things. They don't really think about, if you have a lot of assets and you're passing away, what's going to happen to your children. And you brought up some, interesting facts. Tell us how, that has helped you in growing your brand, building your online presence and being consistent and building that digital visibility that you need as a law firm today.
Sure. And I think my foundation starts with, I want to provide an educational approach to all my clients. So you can see over my shoulder, there's a lot of books behind me. My mother was a librarian. I grew up around books. We've always had books everywhere. And so I want to take that same education focus and provide it to my clients. When we get to the YouTube channel, what I found was there's plenty of videos out there that can tell you how to do some of these basic things, but a lot of times they use all the fancy legal words that we understand, that the normal person who doesn't have a law degree has no idea what things like redemption mean. So the goal of the YouTube channel is to take some of these concepts in business law and estate planning and try to explain them to you in more of a straightforward, plain English manner. And what I found from talking to clients is that when we hop on the phone for our first phone conversation, their feedback to me is, I watch the video and our phone call feels like conversation number 2. Because the YouTube videos are just like you and I talking now. I'm usually looking into this exact same camera. And so this feels like the first conversation that I was explaining to them about their trust and why their 50-year-old son may need one. So when we hop on that phone call, that's like conversation number 2. They said, we've already talked about my son who's 50, and I understand why he needs a trust. Now let's go a little further. Let's dig a little deeper. Tell me more about what I need to know. And so that's been kind of the underlying approach for the videos. And for most of my marketing is, the estate planning, the business law, it doesn't have to be complex and confusing. It doesn't have to be opaque. We want you to understand it. If you're signing an estate plan with my office, I'm not going to let you sign the documents until you tell me you understand them. Because too often people will bring me their old estate plan from 10 or 15 years ago and we'll review it, And I'll say, okay, well, here's what you've got laid out right now. And they say, wait a second, that's not what I wanted to have happen. That's not what I thought I signed all those years ago. And we find out that they really didn't understand what they signed. They just showed up at the lawyer's office, signed whatever paper was put in front of them, and went about their merry way. So I want to make sure that's not happening and that you understand what you're signing. And if that's not what you want to have happen, I don't want you to sign that document. I want to change it around and make sure it represents what you're truly looking to have happen with your legacy, whether it's your estate plan or whether it's your business legacy.
Do you think that's, do you think people just signing it, coming into an attorney's office, signing it, do you think it's being too trusting? Do you think that's an issue? Or do you think people are, feel like, it's not worth their time? Because we find that to be a common issue nowadays where people sign contracts, whether it's service agreements, operating agreements, partnerships, and when, part of my language, when shit hits the fan and they're called out for certain clauses in the contract, that they, whatever it may be, a termination clause, early termination clause, arbitration, whatever it may be, they're like, oh, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know this. I didn't see that part. So my question is it that people are not reading the contracts? Because I know in my own experience, just recently, and I'm the same way, when I have a client that comes in and they're getting a service agreement and we're going over metrics and what our expected return should be, timeline, what are we looking at, commitment, so on and so forth, I want them to know exactly what we're doing. Are you prepared to meet weekly so we can go over your numbers? This is not something where I send you a report and I hope you read it. It's, I want you to know where we're going with your business, what the metrics are, where's our, target ICP, and are we reaching, the vision board, where, let's say, if you're looking to generate 15 new estate planning clients a month that have a average net worth of $1 million plus, well, that should be our goal. And are we reaching that goal versus saying, oh, well, we got close to it this month? Like, I want you to know it. And a lot of times, I'll say, not say a lot of times, but at least in 2 instances recently, I guess I wouldn't say tested them on the contract, but, I asked some questions just to make sure that we're going back and forth and they understood it. And they're like, oh, well, actually, I had Chat GPT read it, and they said that it was fine. And I'm like, huh? You let Chat GPT read the contract that you're signing and putting your money up for and obligating whatever financial obligation you have to put forward. And it's so, I don't know if it's just mind boggling to me that people do that. Have you run across something like this?
Yeah. And I think what we have to remember is one of the hardest things as a human being is to say, I read a document and I don't understand it. I think people get embarrassed, especially if you're a business person and you've been in business for 25 years, you know your contracts, you know how all this works. It's embarrassing to admit to somebody else, especially somebody like your lawyer who you're paying money to, that I don't actually understand what paragraph 2.3 means. I always assumed it meant something else, but I never really read it or I never understood it. And I think that's a challenge we have as lawyers to overcome, is that we need to tell our clients, it's okay if you don't understand it. Like you were saying, here's the expectation. We need to be checking in weekly. We need to know we're hitting our metrics. If you don't understand what the metric is or how to meet the metric, you need to tell me that now, and it's okay. It's not about, I really think that a lot of people just get embarrassed to say, I don't know, because they feel sophisticated in every area of their life. They drove up in a beautiful car. They're making lots of money. Of course, they understand everything because everybody assumes they understand everything because of how well they're doing. But they're afraid to say, I need to take a step back and really understand what I'm signing today.
Huh. And that's a great point. I think you hit it right on the head. I think people are embarrassed, and it's an ego thing too, like you said, very successful, has everything put together. And then you come, you're paying an attorney to, give you some consulting and looking at your contracts. And for you to tell them, hey, I don't get this. Can you teach me it? I don't really understand it. But I think those are some of the growing pains that come with business, because, even Bill Gates will tell you he's not the smartest person in Microsoft. What he does is he tries to find the smartest people. He doesn't know it all. And even in my own business, I'm not the best at all 20 services that we offer, but I make sure that my team members are the best and I can trust them, and that we work together and we understand, hey, if we're looking to run this funnel, or we're running to run this metrics ad, or if we're running to run this content system, we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we have a good strategy going forward. And I think one of the biggest factors that I think people really lose touch with is measurement. If you're not measuring your KPIs, if you're not measuring your daily growth, and that's from micro to macro, you're never going to see true success, because until you start measuring it, you're not going to know where your weak points are. You're not going to know your strengths, and you're not going to know what to enhance and what to work on. And I feel like a lot of businesses, they do well, right? And they think they're doing well because they have this, monetary mindset where it's okay, I'm making X amount of dollars a month, my bills are paid, my car is paid, I got some extra money in my pocket. But that's not really business. Business is consistent growth and progress and doing better, right? Whether you're making 50,000 a month or 500,000 a month, are you leaving money on the table? And could you have made more this month? And then obviously, it goes into that whole risk and reward thing. Obviously, you don't want to work 24 hours a day, but can you enhance your systems? Can you make it better? Can you generate more clients? And most importantly, at what point do you ask yourself, infrastructure, foundationals? I talk to a lot of my clients that, run firms themselves. We represent, over 50 law firms. One of the things is, are you tracking your metrics, and do you know when you need to increase your foundation? Where, hey, can you bring on 50 new clients this month and give them all the high level quality that you want to give them and attend to all their matters with your current infrastructure, with your current staff, with the current systems? And at what point, right? If you're getting 30 clients a month, maybe you can be sustainable at 30. But if you're really bottlenecking at 40, at 35, you should be looking at implementing new foundations or expanding that foundation. So when you hit 40, you're not pulling your hair out because you're now trying to micromanage a bunch of clients and you're losing quality and you're missing KPIs, you're mixing deadlines. And that's kind of one of the things that I focus in my business is, scalability, but most importantly, sustainability. Because I've seen so many businesses, I can't even tell you how many law firms, media agencies, even medical practices that, they balloon. They get really, really big. They get lots of clients. They make 6-7 figure months, and it's not sustainable because they didn't do any investment into the infrastructure or foundation, and they find themselves going from making $300,000-$400,000 a month in revenues to dropping down to 60,000, 70,000, which is not bad, but going from $400,000 to 70,000, you're having a catastrophic failure in the business. I mean, there's no way to look at it. And these are some of the things that we look at. But you're scaling your firm. You got 14 years. You started out, I believe you said in your apartment. Then you got a co-working space. Now you have your own office. What has been one of the most effective ways for you to consistently grow your client base? Has it been referrals, content, networking, digital marketing? What has really helped you harness that magic pipeline that has helped your firm just, exponentially increase in size?
Sure. Can I say yes to all those things? I mean, it's been a variety. It's a mixture. I think, one of the things as you were talking about the KPIs and when people run into this is including in investing in the infrastructure, you have to invest in your people. So I'm a big fan of coaching programs. I'm a big fan of outside companies who can say, listen, you've gone from 300 to 75. You're scared, but here's why. They can tell you what happened. For me, it's been making sure I stay in touch with the people I've worked with. So again, it's the authenticity. It's every year, all of my clients get a birthday card on their birthday. So it's a lot of staying in touch with the people I'm working with currently and I've worked with in the past, because it's a lot easier to grow based on the people you already know than to go out and find new people. Now, to find new people, I use the YouTube channel. The YouTube has been a great return on investment for me because people are able to watch a video. They can watch a whole playlist full of them and then say, okay, we've answered a few questions, but now I need to hop on that phone call with Andrew and talk through a few more things. We use newsletters, we use email marketing, we have a quarterly book giveaway. So I think the idea is I try to make sure if you're on my list, you're hearing from me about 60 to 70 times a year. And that's how your list grows. Because just this morning, I spoke with somebody who was the neighbor of a former client of mine. And she said, Melissa told me to give you a call. And by the way, our other neighbor, Lori, is going to be calling you this week as well, because over the weekend, we were all just having drinks out on the porch. And Melissa told us what a great time she had working with you earlier this year. And we both looked at each other and said, wait a second, we don't have anything in place. We need to call Andrew as well. And so by staying focused on the folks I've worked with, keeping in contact with them, that's a really strong way to help scale your business. I think a lot of people get so focused on, let's do a new Google ad, let's do a new shiny online object. They forget they've got a whole list of people that they've worked with, and hopefully they're happy that they've worked with you. And those people are one of the best sources of referrals of new business that I think a lot of people forget to talk to.
And I mean, I think that's one of the things when it comes to specifically, your field of law, estate planning, business planning, contract drafting, things of that nature. It's a big trust factor. You're bringing somebody in that, is going to be privy to some of your most sensitive materials, your income, how much you've made, how much you have saved, what are your plans for the future? Even when we start going into wills, these are very sensitive topics. I mean, talking about who you're going to leave your money to, certain family members who you're not going to leave your money to. So trust is a biggest factor. And when you get a referral, I mean, you know this better than anybody, Andrew. I mean, referrals are golden in this business because it's already built that trust and confidence. And now it's just really, you just taking it the next step further in that whole process, which has allowed, many firms to expand. And the YouTube channel, I mean, it's phenomenal. You get a lot of good information. And I think what you're doing different that I see is that whole education aspect, right? A lot of attorneys, they try to hide, the golden facts, the golden ticket of knowledge because they want somebody to pay for it. But the reality is this, by you expressing and giving them education and educating, them from a basic standpoint, not only does it enhance your expertise, your authority in the field, it drives your exposure, but most importantly, it builds that trust. And now the thing is, they're not an estate planning attorney. They're not a business attorney. If they've come to the decision where, hey, I have, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, whatever, 10 million in assets. If I'm not willing to pay attorney, a couple $1,000s, whatever, how much it is, to protect those assets, but I'm willing to pay insurance fees and everything, it's just foolish. And I see that, I guess one of the things I'll bring up is, in, I guess we could say, my heritage. I'm from India originally. I was born in America, but I find a lot of, people in the older generations, like my dad's generation, they're very successful. They own businesses. My dad owns his own IP practice. So he's an attorney himself. And you would think somebody of his caliber would understand the value of an estate planning attorney and making sure your assets are put into solid trust, will, and you have just a solid plan of action. And you see a lot of them just say, no, I can do it on my own. I have my own plan. I read the Wall Street Journal. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen individuals that have spent most of their time, doing it on their own, maxing out their 401k, trying to set up their own plans. And when they hit 60, 65, somebody, whistles into their ear and says, hey, maybe you should talk to, a fiduciary. Maybe you should talk to an estate planning guy. And what they think that they have set up gets blown out the water. And they think they're going to be complimented and say, wow, look at how great you've done it. And it just looks like, yeah, you've done okay, but here's what you're doing. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong, this wrong. And it's that education component that I think that you bring to the channel that really allows for clients to not only resonate with you, but they can familiarize and understand without feeling their ego being hit at the same time. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, it's the importance of working with professionals. So, your story is really interesting to me because this weekend we had coffee with my friend who's a financial advisor because my middle son wanted to learn about stocks and investments. And as we were walking out, he said to me, Dad, if I were to do some investing, you'd be the one to manage the money for me, right? And I said, no. Tony would be the one we just sat there with for an hour. He's a financial advisor. I don't do stocks. I don't do investments. That's what you have a financial advisor for. And he said, oh, I just assumed you would do it. You're my father. I said, true. I get the assumption. But in reality is if you want it done right, you need to look at the professionals, not just try to do it yourself or keep it all in house. And just like your story as well, some of my worst clients have been attorneys who, just like your father, no offense, have done the same thing. They're doing their own planning and they assume they've got it all correct. And then something happens to them and their spouse comes in and we look at the documents and say, whoa, this is a mess. What they thought they were doing right has left a huge mess for the family. And nobody thinks to question them on it because they're an attorney. They know what they're doing. So, going back to that being embarrassed to say, I'm not sure. Some of these folks put together their own plans and everyone just takes them as word because of who they are. And then you find out afterwards there's a lot of missing parts that could have easily been filled in.
Yeah, absolutely. I have actually a family friend that, so they sold a business, and long story short, they were getting, I think it was like $15 million, a little bit under $15 million in the sale. Never had a fiduciary, never had a financial advisor, never had an estate planning guy, tax lawyer, nothing. And $15 million is a lot of money. And even more so, it's a lot of taxes that you have to pay. They had told him, and he knew about this sale for about, I would say about 24 months, right? So in that time, they were trying to tell him, hey, you should, get a good estate plan put in together, asset protections, and let's see if we can talk to a tax guy. So, on 15 million, they were looking at spending, I don't know the exact number. I think it was around 4 million in taxes, maybe a little bit more. And he kept saying, no, I would never have to pay that much. I would never have to pay that much. And unfortunately, he had to learn the hard lesson. And he ended up, after the 15 million, he didn't get all 15 million. He spent almost, I think it was a little bit over 5 on it just on taxes. And he could have avoided all of that if he had his assets protected and everything wasn't just, because he had lots of homes, lots of this, lots of that, but none of it was structured. None of it was protected. Everything was in these little random LLC, some of them in their personal names, some of them here, some of them leveraged. And it just is so chaotic coming into it. And, prime example, situations like that where, you can take, $4 or $5 million is your penalty for it because you didn't plan ahead of time. You could have paid an attorney just like yourself, $50,000, $100,000, whatever. Let's say $100,000, even $200,000, and saved yourself probably $2-3 million in the process. But I think some people just have to learn the hard way. But what you're doing with the education aspect is definitely paramount. And I see more and more professionals. I have a client currently in Chicago that is an estate planning attorney, just like yourself. And, obviously his ICP is, 50-year-old to 65-year-olds, $1 million plus in net worth, high income earners. And every single time we qualify our leads before, we do the conversion and send them to them. A lot of times I ask them, so what are you guys currently doing? What is it structured looking like? What are you guys really interested in? I'm looking for somebody to, help me lower my taxes on my assets, right? And usually it's the wrong question, because first they need to figure out how to protect their assets and then understand what are they paying taxes on? What should they not be paying taxes on? And even like investments, they don't even realize. I think, what was it? One of the clients was telling us that he's been doing, stock trading, options, futures. And he made a lot of money on it. And he didn't even know. And this, I was kind of, flabbergasted, because he's been doing this for 15 years. How did you not know that you had to pay taxes on the capital gains? Especially if, you're doing day trading and you're holding the stock for less than a year, you pay a higher tax on it. And, his attorney started, talking to him about, I think it's like tax deferment on losses, where you can use your losses to offset the capital gain taxes. I mean, he had spent so much money over the years, and it's just simple things like that. Go to the professional, go to the person that does this every single day, that has made it his craft, that he's a master at it. You reading Wall Street Journal or reading a self-help book, or, following the latest trend in finance management is not going to ever give you the level of depth that someone like yourself would actually have. And it's just foolish, especially, what you're dealing with, business owners and entrepreneurs and, estate planning. We're talking about people's legacies. We're talking about, you grind it and scrape by and save for 20, 30, 40 years, put it all together, invested and, sacrifice. And now, because you have to pay the guy, 0.5% or whatever the number is, probably less than that, you putting it all at risk. It just seems so foolish to me. But as we go into like the future of the firm, what do you think separates a successful solo firm from the small firm owners who generally struggle?
I think it really comes down to having the vision of what you want your life to look like. So for me, it's not employees. For me, it's working with outside companies. It's working with contractors, so that I have that ability just to kind of control my schedule, control the way the firm is going. I think the challenge when you get to smaller to mid-sized firms, you have a lot of people under the same roof, you got more mouths to feed, and you start making decisions based on, we've got to make payroll next week versus what's best for the firm. So I think really, and I'm not saying not to partner up with people. By all means, you can have a great small to mid-sized firm if we get everybody aligned on what your goals and what your vision is and where you want that firm to go. But I think it's really that vision is what separates the really successful solo small firms from some of the other firms that just aren't really sure kind of what to do next and what those next steps are. And you get buried in all the things that come at you, whether it's new clients, whether it's overhead, whether it's litigation, whatever it can be, it can just bury you, unfortunately. The solos I know who are doing the best really know who they are and what works for them and what motivates them, what their passion is. They're doing a type of law that they like their clients. They don't regret going to the office in the morning. They may not want to go at 9 a.m., but they're going at 9 a.m. because maybe there's a meeting, but they don't dread going to work. They have their weekends off. They're spending time with their family because they've designed their life. They've designed their practice around what they want everything to look like. And whether you're a lawyer or whether you're a business owner, the same thing happens if you're running any kind of a business. Do you want to be behind the screen 24/7? You can if you'd like, but as you were saying earlier, you don't want to find out 20 years later that all your kids are off to college and now you're looking around at an empty house and you never saw the soccer games and you never saw the school plays. So we want to make sure that we're really understanding what we want to have happen and designing that life around it.
Absolutely. And you couldn't have said it better. Really having a vision for your life. And one of the things I see, you're right, when these firms start to grow, I actually have a client right now that won a pretty large personal injury case, and he got a pretty large disbursement. And the first thing, he asked me, which, I was honored that he asked me this. He's like, what should I do? And I told him, you should look at your budget. First off, talk to your accountant, talk to your finance guy who's actually helping you with the planning of the business, and talk to him about, where you should put the money. Because his first thought was, I'm going to go get me, the next biggest office and get a big billboard and get this and spend all the money in investing in the firm. Personally, I told him, I was like, I don't think you need to do that at this point. I think you should, focus on foundation. If you want to expand a little bit, great. But, your office, there's a lot of things that don't bring money into the firm. There's support systems. And some of those things are getting the big office is great, but does it bring cash into the business? Generally not. Getting a bunch of new employees, does it bring cash into the business? Unless they're selling, no. They're all support systems. And if those support systems, if you're eating off of one case, like, do you have the caseload to, sustain these new employee hires? Do you have it consistently? Or is this, one of the one-offs where, you're going to be eating off this case for the next 6-7 months, hoping another big one comes about? Like, think of it as in a more sustainable way. And now, he's running the firm, much better. It's more, he's got some virtual assistants. He's got this and got that, but it's more sustainable and he's not eating at it. Cause we see a lot of these guys, they hit it big, make a nice big case here, and then they just start spending crazily. Marketing is the only thing that generally brings cash into your business, real marketing. So I'm not talking about brandability, because brandability is good, but that's something for a more mature business. When you're small to mid-size, you're trying to become regional, multiple offices, brandability is important. But I see a lot of these attorneys in the beginning, and they don't do what you do, right? What you did, you went education, you went onto YouTube, you built a platform where you can, communicate with your audience and really resonate with them and give them the insights that you've, harnessed over the years, where a lot of them are looking at promoting the brand of the firm, where you're not at that point yet. You're still at the point where you're looking at pipeline. Focus on generating that pipeline, consistent case values, consistent case flow. So it's, time and time again, get yourself another attorney only once you can support it. And, I personally have seen so many solo attorneys that have done it right. And then I've seen a lot of them do it wrong because they're not looking at the numbers. They're not looking at their books. They think they got all this money coming in, and they probably do, but it's that same saying, as fast as it comes in is as fast as it goes out, unless you have a plan on how to really apply it. So I will ask, a couple more questions before we wrap this up. If you could go back to your first year running your practice, what would you do differently?
I frankly would have started a YouTube channel sooner. I don't know if YouTube was that big in 2011, but I think I underestimated how powerful video marketing was when I started. And I work with a business coach, and for years he was telling me you need to get a video channel, you need to start putting videos out. And it would just get pushed off year after year after year. And then finally in 2020, he said, no, you have to get at least, I think, 5 videos done by the end of the year. And so I remember the last week of December 2020, reserving a conference room upstairs in this building and shooting a bunch of videos in the conference room, because I wasn't going to be listening to him in January of 2021 yell at me for not doing the videos that I promised to do. And so I would definitely go back and start with that. And and the interesting thing about YouTube or any video platform is the old videos continue to grow. If you think of it like radioactivity, they have a really long half-life. And a lot of times I'll look at my channel and find that a video from 2021 is the one that's performing best today. So I think I would go back and start my video channel earlier.
Awesome. So what I took from that is you understand the value of content in today's day and age and how powerful content marketing can be for a firm like yours. Awesome. So what would we say the next 3 to 5 years is for the firm?
I think it's going to be continue to push out the content. I've written a couple of books and I want to write some more books. I want to add a Substack. I want to continue to grow what I call the Ayers Nook, which is an homage to my mother. It's the idea of like a reading nook in the corner with a comfy leather chair where you can go and you can get your information on estate planning. You can get your information on business law. And I want to really have that content hub where people can come and learn about it. And if they need a complex estate plan, let's do it. But if you need a simple estate plan, you can sit in that chair and say, okay, I really just need a will. I don't need an irrevocable trust. I don't need advanced tax planning. I really just need something that's suitable for me and my family. That comfortable zone where we're really giving people what they need for their estate planning or for their business.
Amazing, amazing. So you got it all planned out. So that's the next 3 to 5 years for the firm. And, I think one of the things that really makes you a game changer and why, let's say if I had an individual coming to me today and saying, hey, I'm looking for an estate planning attorney or a business attorney, why I personally would recommend you to them is because you can tell in all your actions and all your answers today, and even your past videos that you've done, you care about your clients. You're not here just to make a quick buck and quick a check. Yes, you're running a business and businesses are made to make money, but at the same time, you're here to make sure your clients understand what they're doing, why they're doing, or why it's important to, protect these assets, why it's important to have a solid plan in place, because you don't know what's going to happen. And you find some of these, I don't know if you've heard of these, like Riverdale kind of retirement community homes that do the advanced healthcare where like as you progress and get older and sicker, they kind of take care with you all the way through. And I've always seen that doctors and attorneys are the ones that go there the earliest because they understand how expensive probate and all these things can be, medical bills can be when you don't have a strong system in place. And yes, you may have $3, $4, $5 million in the bank, but in reality, if you have a spouse that's suffering from cancer or any other major illness, $3, $4, $5 million that can go pretty quickly. Stay in a hospital for 1 month in a cancer ward without insurance is damn near 100,000 plus, and that's at the minimum. That's not including all the medications and chemo and everything with it. Being smart, educating them. I think, Andrew, you're spot on with where your firm is going. You have care and compassion, which is one thing that, is your, I guess you could call it your magic bullet. It's so important to how you carry yourself, how you've carried the firm. And I think it's one of the founding factors of why your firm has been so successful in these 14 plus years. And I'm excited to see what the next 14 holds for you.
Yeah. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that.
No problem. Well, as we wrap this up, I wanted to say, it was great having you on the show. If somebody does need you, right? And I know that you had mentioned that you have an office in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, Minnesota and New York. So if somebody needs a solid estate planning attorney or a business attorney or just somebody for solid advice that you have, how can they get in touch with you?
You can always go to my website, Andrew, M as in mother, Ayers, AYERS.com, or you can hop over to LinkedIn and you can find me over there. You'll see my picture and you can always connect with me or shoot me a DM and we can take it from there.
Awesome. Guys, and if you didn't catch that, check in the description below. It has all his contact information, his website, his YouTube channel, his LinkedIn. If you need somebody, act now, don't act later. Your future, your family's future, your legacy is just as important to protect now than when something bad happens. And like any smart person, If you have insurance on your car, why wouldn't you protect yourself for the future when it comes to this? Protect yourself. Get with Andrew. He knows what he's talking about. He's been doing it for almost 20 years now. I mean, the guy is here to help you. Check out his videos on his YouTube channel, Andrew Ayers. It's been an honor having you on the show, and I look forward to having you on again sometime.
Thank you. Absolutely. I would love to do this again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.